name's Danielle, and I have collected quite a few plants over time. I think I have maybe about 30 plants now, and while I'm by no means a plant expert, I have learned a few things about how to keep my plants alive and how to help them thrive. So I'm going to be sharing a few of the things that I've learned over time in this video. Hopefully some of them will be helpful to you. The first thing is to always do your research about each plant that you bring into your home. I know some people say that before you even buy a plant in the store, to research it and learn about what kind of lighting it needs, the humidity level that it requires, if it thrives in shade or in bright light, so that you can know if you have a space that might suit that plant into your house. I'm not gonna lie, I don't always do this. Sometimes I'm just in a store and a plant just calls to me and I have like an emotional connection to it, and I buy it not knowing anything about the plant or what it's even called, and then I bring it home and I have to learn everything about it. I would just recommend you to do your research about each plant that you bring into your space. So look up what kind of light it requires, if it thrives better in bright light in front of a sunny, bright window, if it works better in shade, filtered light, the kind of water that it needs, if maybe the plant thrives better using filtered water instead of normal tap water, or just any kind of information like that. And I would say to document that information somewhere that's easily accessible. So I'm going to show you guys what I do in order to track everything about my plants. So I use a bullet journal where I document everything about all of my plants. I just write down all of that basic information that I told you guys. Information about the kind of light that it needs, the kind of water, if it likes humidity, if it collects dust easily, pretty much basic information that I find about each plant. And I also like to put if the plant is toxic. So for example, this Dieffenbachia, or also known as dumb cane, it can be toxic to children or to pets if they eat the sap in the leaves. So I like to document that. That way, if you do have small children in your house or pets, you can put it maybe on a higher shelf, or you can figure out where to place it into your house. I also like to write down maybe common diseases or ailments of that plant and what it could mean. So for example, my golden pothos tends to get very droopy when it needs water. So I like to write that down. That way, if when I see it that it's droopy, I'll remember and I'll know, okay, it just needs water. And over time, you will start to memorize everything about these plants and you won't need to refer to this at all. But I like to document, at least when I first get a plant and I don't know much about it, I like to document all of that basic information so that I have it readily available. I also really just like to have a drawn visual of each plant, because sometimes I don't realize how many plants I have, but when I see them all here, I realize that I have quite a few. Also, when you go to a nursery or to buy some plants at a plant store, you could always bring this with you. The second thing I like to do is to track when I last watered my plants. So I also document this in my bullet journal. I like to document everything here on my journal. I just like physically checking things off when I complete them. I know some people use an app. There's a lot of really great watering apps out there where you put when you last watered your plant and it'll actually give you a notification saying that you should check in case it needs to be watered again. This is my water tracker. So if you see here, I just write out the months at the top from January to December, and then I write 1 through 31, you know, for the days. And then I make a little key on the side for each plant. I color them different colors, and then every single time that I water that plant, I just mark it on the day. You can see I have several pages of these for just different plants that I have. I only started actually writing down when I was watering my plants maybe about halfway through, I guess, when I first started collecting plants, and this honestly really helped me just take care of my plants better without obsessively checking them every other day to see if they need water. So I usually check if I need to water my plants maybe once or 2 times a week, usually 2 days. For example, on Sunday, I'll look at my handy dandy little water tracker here, and I kind of now know which plants need to be watered every week versus every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. Some that I have need to be watered every 3 days, and I'll just see when I last watered it, and that way I know that it might need to be watered. And I don't immediately go to water it. I'll show you how I check to see if it needs to be actually watered, and then I'll water it. Before I started to document when I last watered my plants, I was going around and checking each one of my plants every single time that I watered any of my plants, and it was just wasting a lot of time, versus now I can see which plants need to be watered based on when I last watered them, and I don't need to go around checking every single one. And this will also lead me into my step 2 of how I actually see if those plants really do need to be watered, because when a plant actually needs to be watered depends on a lot of things, like the size of your pot, the humidity in your air, the flow that you have of air in your space. I believe there are 2 kinds of plant parents out there. There are the helicopter parents that like to obsess over their plants, constantly watch them, make sure they're fed, make sure they have enough water, and these parents sometimes end up killing their plants due to overwatering. I was definitely in that category, or probably still am. The second is the plant neglector that knows that their plants are there. They like to look at them, they appreciate them, but they kind of leave them to fend for themselves. They'll water them when they water them. Eventually, a lot of their plants may die because of underwatering. And that leads me to my next point, which is this handy dandy little moisture meter. I'm sure many of you guys are already aware of this godsend. This honestly changed the game for me so much when I started my little plant jungle here. You can see it goes from dry to wet. You just place it in the soil. The little hand will tell you how moist that soil is. And I also like to use this on several parts of my plant just to make sure that I am getting an accurate reading of the moisture level. Most plants can quickly recover from being underwatered. They may get droopy or shed a few leaves, but most of the plants will perk right back up when they're given water. If you overwater a plant, you're risking root rot, and plants can't really recover from that. When their roots start to rot, that plant's pretty much a goner. My advice is that if you're not sure if you need to water your plant, come back to it in a few days and then water it. My next piece of advice would be to watch your plants. I don't thoroughly inspect them every day, but every few days I'll go around just checking, or occasionally when you walk by a plant, just look at it, see if you see any signs of anything pretty much on the plant. Like all other living things, your plant will communicate with you. It'll tell you what it needs, either in an obvious way or not. Some plants, like humans, are better at communicating than others. So for example, my white Ann plant, she is the most dramatic, and every single time she needs water, which is every 2 to 3 days sometimes, she'll just get very droopy. All of her leaves will droop down, and then I know, okay, she really needs water. I'll give her watering, she perks right back up. The same goes for if your plant is sick, or if it might be infested with some kind of pest. Just going around checking the leaves, checking the soil for anything abnormal, I think is key. This goes back to my first point about doing your research for every plant that you have. Knowing what common signs of distress are for each plant will help you better take care of them and make sure that your plant is happy. Another tip, which might seem kind of silly, is to just show love to your plants. I think they know when you're neglecting them or are not really caring for them. Even though it sounds kind of silly, I feel like just tending to them, dusting their leaves or just showing them love and attention will help your plants thrive. Just remember that you're there to take care of your plants. You're their parent now. You have to make sure that they're doing well. My next tip is to water propagate your plants. Propagation is such an easy and an entirely free way to grow your plant collection. I like to water propagate most of the plants that I have. I quickly learned that if it's the plant that I have never owned before and that I haven't taken care of before, there's a higher chance that I might kill that plant because I don't really know too much about how to care for it. So what I started doing was water propagating a new plant that I brought into my space. So in case the plant in soil dies, I have the water propagation version that I can then replant. I did this when I got my first string of pearls plant. I had put it in a hanging planter that was just too tall for my height, and I wasn't always inspecting it to see if it had any signs of decaying or dying leaves. And when I finally did, I realized that a lot of those pearls at the top of the plant had dried off, and the plant eventually ended up dying. But I had taken several cuttings of that plant since I got it, and I was water propagating them, so it wasn't at a total loss. So I would definitely recommend you to water propagate a lot of your plants. It's just an easy way to make sure that you still have that plant in case one of them dies. Also, just seeing them in those glass jars and seeing the roots emerge from those plants is just so beautiful, and I love seeing that process and just knowing that you helped that little plant grow. And another reason why I think everyone should water propagate their plants is because not only will it help you grow your plant collection, it also helps the plant that you're originally taking that cutting from. Wherever you trim down that plant, it actually helps sprout a new shoe or a new stem, and it encourages growth in that plant. So for example, if you have a plant that isn't really seeming to grow and you haven't seen it develop a new leaf in ages, definitely I would recommend you to take some cuttings. So either cut away leaves that are browning or cut away parts of the stem that you can water propagate, and it'll encourage new leaves to grow. I've done this a lot with my Monstera deliciosa. I think I've taken maybe 5 cuttings, definitely more than 5, maybe 7 cuttings from this plant, and every single time that I do that, a new leaf just sprouts up in a few days, and it's just so encouraging to see those new leaves unfurl. It's just makes me so proud, makes me a proud plant parent. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it somewhat helpful. I know that there are so many plant tips out there that I didn't get to include. These are just a few that I personally feel like really helped my plants start to thrive. So if there's anything that you think I missed or something that really changed the game for you in your plant journey, please comment it down below and let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.